Thank you, Yanis. In a nutshell, I would say that so far we have done quite well, and that was by no means a foregone conclusion 5 years ago. Nevertheless, the country is in the middle of a journey, and the journey is not yet completed. Let me elaborate a little bit on the first part. Over the past 5 years, and especially after 2020, I think that Greece has indeed significant progress in terms of turning around the medium-term dynamics of the country. Let me recap on the main stylized facts, which have already been heard. Nevertheless, it makes no harm of repeating some of them. Clearly, the country has a high growth rate, both in terms of comparison with its own performance in the previous decade, but also in terms of the performance with peers over the last 3 years. The unemployment rate is declining, which is important both for economic as well as for social reasons. We have had, following the shock of the pandemic, a fast return to healthy primary surpluses, which of course are very important in terms of sending the right signals for the future. The volume of investment has been on the up. Here I would like to mention that based on the data from the Eurostat, Greece has the highest growth in terms of investment volumes over the last 5 years, starting from a low base. Nevertheless, investment volumes are up by 40% compared to 2019, including foreign direct investment, which has increased a lot. Banks have improved further their performance in terms of profitability, in terms of reducing imbalances such as NPLs and deferred tax credits. Importantly, the country has become much more extrovert. We export nearly 50% of our GDP now. 1 in 2 euros that we earn comes from sales abroad. That was 20% at the beginning of the Greek debt crisis, so a much more extrovert economy. Here I would like to say that the exporting story is even more interesting for 2 reasons. The first is the fact that we have a pretty diversified exporting basis. The majority of people who follow Greece have in mind that Greece exports tourism and shipping, which of course we do, and they are great industries and we will continue supporting them. But few people know that since 2020, for the last 4 years, we export more goods than services. So that's one thing. And the second thing is that these goods which we export also include an increasing volume of goods that are classified as high-tech exports. Now we export approximately 2 billion euros of goods which are classified as high-tech. Again, starting from a low basis, nevertheless, the trajectory is very good. So obviously we have a lot to do on non-price competitiveness, but we already do something there which is good. So overall, the credibility of the country has improved. This is reflected in the lower cost of borrowing, of public borrowing. Growth, surpluses, lower interest rates, plus some tailwinds from inflation, I have to admit, have resulted into a major reduction in the Greek debt to GDP ratio. And that is also a very positive development. So overall, I would say that compared to 5 years ago, Greece has a growth trajectory which is satisfactory and more sustainable compared to the pre-crisis growth story of Greece. It is a much more extrovert economy. It is a more resilient economy in terms of the sources that it gets its income, because we get more income from reindustrialization of the country. Probably it is not very well known that Greece is one of the few EU countries where the share of industry increases, both in terms of GDP as well as in terms of contribution to employment. All these are, of course, a very promising platform for the future. Now, about the future, I will make just a short comment here, and perhaps I can elaborate a little bit further during our discussion. It is obviously important to maintain the fiscal and macro stability that we have achieved. But for me, John, now the next stage for Greece to continue growing and to achieve the real convergence to which Julia mentioned and referred to, the key is to improve the micro side of the Greek economy. This is the important thing for us to achieve real convergence. So the key word will be reforms. And this is why I tell you that the country is in the middle of a journey. There is a lot that has been done, but there is a lot to be done further.